What's up, humans? Happy Monday again. Welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Okay, so just a few hours ago, I was telling you guys about stuff that will be happening over the next week or so. And I just dropped my How Put Off video. Thank you for the support. And as I was going to get food, Jesse Michels dropped a video. And the very first thing that I read from his Twitter account was as follows. New First-Hand UFO Whistleblower. Randy Anderson is a Green Beret and an American hero. In March of 2014, he was taken to an underground facility at Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane in Indiana to a secure secret compartmentalized facility titled Off-World Technology. He was shown an orb levitating above podium and a gauntlet emitting holographic hieroglyphic looking text. This second object reportedly killed the person retrieving it. I have back channeled with Navy contacts who say that while Wright-Patterson reverse engineers the Air Force's most exotic retrieve technology, Crane does this for the Navy. This is new information. I didn't know about this. I'm sure plenty of researchers did know about this, but I've been at this for just a year, so bear with me. Randy also still occasionally works contract jobs at Area 51 and has seen electrogravitic, quote unquote, anti-gravity triangle-shaped craft flying around the test site. Randy's credentials are beyond reproach. We have his DD-214 as evidence of his service and his weapons training certificate from Crane, proving that he was stationed there. The implications of this interview cannot be overstated, although in many ways, as he'll admit, it begets more questions than answers. If anyone has had similar experiences or can add any insight on what Randy saw, please reach out to me or UAP Gerb, who introduced me to Randy and is the best up-and-coming UFO researcher in the world right now. Go follow him. He's going to be releasing some mind-blowing information in the coming months and years. On a final note, I want to say that I had to personally convince Randy to do this. He was reticent to come out at all and extremely vigilant around not doing or saying anything here for self-gain. In fact, there was a section in my monologue dedicated to discussing the deployments and sacrifice for the country on the battlefield. He wanted that taken out. If we get any blowback for this piece, which I'm sure we will, it should be directed solely at me. Full episode in reply below. Okay. So I've seen this episode twice already, and I got a few things that I would love to say, but I'm just going to play you the first and only clip that I'm going to play, which is the actual firsthand account of Randy seeing some sort of an orb levitating on top of something else that they got from a crash retrieval and some type of a bracelet that made him see some weird hieroglyphs or hieroglyphs. So here's the clip of Randy Anderson talking about his firsthand experience at Area 51. Here it is.
The first object was a metallic basketball-sized sphere, and it was above a podium, and looked like it was just levitating above the podium.
Levitating above the podium. Mm-hmm. So there was space between the sphere and the podium itself.
Correct. And I remember at one point, like, trying to angle myself, like, what? How is that?
Do you think it could have been some sort of magnetic
Maybe.
levitation? Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
But it's just levitating there.
It was just levitating
Did it
above it.
look like a prosaic, like this wood table where if you were to, touch it, it would act like a normal object? Did it look holographic? What did it look like?
That's a good question. Then what stood out to me was the way the metal looked. It looked unnatural. So we spent a little time there, and then we went to the next object, and it was another metallic object, very, very strange looking, same type of vibe. It's hard to describe because it didn't get a full view of it, but it looked like something you could like reach in and grab and pick up, and maybe it was something that would you could put on your arm, or something that would use it would have to use it with their arm. That's the best way I can describe it.
Like a gauntlet.
Like a gauntlet, yeah. That's a good analogy, or maybe something that would like be like a shield, but and it had like a crystal type of display screen, or I don't know if it was a display screen. It was a square, rectangular. Looked like it would potentially be a display screen, and it was sitting. It was not levitating. It was sitting on a table, and at that point, like I'm looking at it, and it almost looked like a mirage type of effect, and in that. Above that display screen were these hieroglyphic symbols that I started to see appear.
What?
Yeah.
Hieroglyphic symbols.
That's the best way I can describe them.
And
I don't know what they were.
Yeah. So, a couple of things before we continue. The first thing is that we need to learn how to distinguish what a whistleblower is from an actual, just a witness, And the fact that Randy is talking about this, entering into this site that is like underground, those sites are not supposed to be real. They're not supposed to exist. That means that those sites are illegal, especially if they're dealing with off-world technology, as Randy said, that it said in that little sign. If that is the case, that is illegal. And whatever Randy is saying here is whistleblowing effectively. The only doubts I still have is that whether he's doing it with permission from Dobser or if he's doing it without permission from Dobser. That changes everything. So I would love to know what is going on here. Is he coming forward after Dobser approved him, or is he coming forward without that approval? That's my first question. So I would love to know. The second part of it is this whole talk about the bracelet does raise a few red flags with me. The first one being, if you guys don't recall, there's this old video from Jonathan Reed. that I've spoken to Jaime Maussan about, and I've spoken to other people about. And the part about the bracelet was something that didn't really seem like it fitted this story, you know? And that raises a red flag to me, but only because of that, not anything else. Maybe it's just a coincidence that there's another bracelet that this guy saw. Maybe that's it. But I just wanted to like spitball all that it comes to mind right now, right? Okay, so the other part is like the orb that they took from a crash site that is not a craft, just an orb that was floating. I wonder what that is. What does it have to do with some kind of a control system? Does it have to do with anything else? Also, Randy talking about black triangles does feed into the lore of these TR3B craft and the Aurora and all of that stuff. So you might want to look into that too. But I want to hear what you guys have to say about this new quote unquote whistleblower. I had to check with my sources to see if this is either the one that the UAP Disclosure Fund is helping, or if this is one that has to do anything with Dr. Stephen Greer, because we know he's been talking about multiple whistleblowers coming forward. There was a moment where Randy did talk about Michael Herrera, and he said that they were good friends. And if that raises a red flag to you, I understand, because it did to me. We know that Michael Herrera first came out with Dr. Stephen Greer. And the fact that this guy is saying they're good friends, immediately it jumped at me, and I had to ask Gerb himself, because Gerb is the one that brought essentially a Randy to the fold. Jesse came out with this piece, but Gerb is coming out with a lot more a little later, and I'm going to link everything in the description so you guys can check it out. But I did ask Gerb, and Gerb told me that no, he has nothing to do with Greer, and also Gerb has nothing to do with Greer. There has been some type of talk about Gerb being involved with Dr. Stephen Greer in some capacity. That is not the case. In fact, Dr. Stephen Greer has accused Gerb of being an intelligence asset in the past, and obviously Gerb didn't like that. In fact, that if you're like a civilian that is trying to do research on this, being accused as an intelligence asset is like ufology 101 at this point. It doesn't mean it's true, you know? So, no, this guy, Randy Anderson, is not tied to Dr. Stephen Greer. And I would dare say that Michael Herrera doesn't like being tied to Dr. Stephen Greer at all. He came out with him, yes, but over the years, Dr. Greer has made it very clear that he's like not telling the story Herrera wanted to tell at all, as Herrera wanted it. And this is like a trend in ufology. It happens all the time. People that come forward with a story, and people that want to cover the story, they tell the story they want, and they don't tell the story that the whistleblower wants, or the witness, or whatever. And I think that we need to be extra careful about that. I've already seen some pushback against Randy. A couple of things that jumped out at me from that. It is true that if Randy signed any NDAs about this, he can't really talk about this officially. And if he's still working at Area 51, which he claims he does occasionally, that becomes really tricky. So I would like to know in what capacity he's working at Area 51 still. And I would like to know if he signed any NDAs. I would imagine that he did, because he visited allegedly one of the most secretive sites that exist in the world. So he should have signed an NDA. So why is he talking about this? if he's talking about this without the permission and risking everything, that means he's a real whistleblower, but he's risking a lot. And I keep going back to the way other whistleblowers were treated in the past. Edward Snowden is the most famous example. He still cannot enter American soil. And there's also the most recent Boeing whistleblowers. 3 of them were about to testify, and all 3 of them died under mysterious circumstances. And I would dare say that what was happening with Boeing is far less important than this. So that raises questions. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I don't believe Randy Anderson. I'm just saying that if anybody's going to push back on this, that's the arguments that are going to be used. So this guy, Randy, and also Jesse, because he said that if you had any doubts or any inquiries, you would have to go to him or Gerb. Those are the questions that they need to answer. And something that did ring well to me was that Anderson did show his DD-214, which is essentially the proof that you were serving for the government in any branch. At the time you were serving, it is very specific. It says where you were, how much time you were deployed, the activities you did, and that was presented in the video. So as far as we know, Randy Anderson is exactly who he says he is. People from the Green Berets know him, not all of them, but some of them do. Him working at Area 51 is kind of weird, him saying that, because there really hasn't been many people coming out and saying that they work there. So that's something to keep an eye out for, I guess. But other than that, this guy seems to be who he says he is. And we're going to be doing a lot more investigation into his claims, into his case, into his profile. Kudos to him for coming forward. That requires a lot of bravery. So kudos. Kudos to Jesse and Gerb for coming out with this story. But I have to be clear about this. If this one is just the first one on a Monday, that means that we're getting him. We're getting potentially the one that worked with Michael Herrera, which is a separate one. I got confirmation that those are not the same ones. And we're getting another one that is getting help from the UAP Disclosure Fund. That's a different one. And also, well, we're getting Jason Sands, who he just was part of an interview on the Julian Dory podcast, which I love. And who knows what he's going to talk about there. But
all right, I just wrapped 4.5 hours with James Fox and Jason Sands. This is probably going to be released as an 1.5 hour podcast with James going through his documentary, The Program, and some color commentary around that, with Jason Sands piping in sometimes to give some thoughts and some previews of his story. And then the last 3 hours is probably going to be its own podcast where Jason Sands tells his entire story from birth all the way through. What I do want to say, and I say all this on the podcast and much more. There were a lot of heart-to-heart moments on there. I did not believe Jason's story at all. And there are many aspects of it that, and I told him this to his face, that I still don't believe. That said, if even a small percentage of what he worked on is the case, it is a big deal. And his military record, he shared all the files with us. That's never been done before. James had verified that stuff ahead of time, and we shared that on the podcast. Like, that is real. Where some of the claims come into some of the alien stuff, I understand, just like me, a lot of you are going to be like, oh my God, come on. But we got to know him as a human being. We got to really, it was a psychological understanding of him. Like I said, we started at the very beginning. We went through the PTSD trauma of his childhood, which was really I mean, it was emotional stuff. It was very heavy. That's going to be right from the get-go in that podcast. And we obviously got to his claims, and we got to some of the claims that I told him this, as I said, like, that I think are just absolutely not true. But I want you guys to hear what he says and make your own judgments on certain things. As James and I just said to him, I believe on camera and off, you know, if 1% of it's true, that is a big deal and pretty crazy. So that's the situation. I had a lot of reservations about doing this podcast. I've spoken with a lot of people offline over the past few days because my job is to let people express what they want to say and do it in a way that gives the audience the most information for them to make their own decisions. And I have to be able to go into it with an open mind to do that. And I really worked hard over the past couple days to try to clear my head and not just be like, oh my fucking God, I can't even believe I'm going to do this. And I'm glad I was able to get to a place where I could look at it with as much of an open mind as possible. Like I said, some of the recent claims, again, like I think that has to do with PTSD and repressed, you know, false memories and things like that. And we discussed that directly on camera. Like I said, I just want to make sure I cover the bases here, but I'm going to get these 2 podcasts out, I believe, this week. We're going to work on it right away. So yeah, there's some, this is a very, very interesting human being psychological piece. And I do appreciate Jason coming in here to share it. And I appreciate James being there to really far expand upon what he was able to get for his sit down with Jason in the program. So stay tuned.
We're getting a busy week, and it started with a bang. I got to tell you, whatever doubts you have, whatever reservations you have about this case, please let me know in the comments. I'll be open to reading everything you got. Let me know. Do you think this guy, Randy Anderson, do you think his story is believable? Do you like his story? What were the red or green flags you got from his story? Please let me know. I'll be answering to comments for a while after I release this, so let me know. Thank you, Jesse, for this. Thank you, Gerb, for this. I hope we can keep talking about this behind the scenes, but you guys are doing an amazing job, so kudos to both of you. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe. If you want to support the channel in any other way, I'm going to ask you to please pick a link from the description. Whatever you pick, thank you for the support. And I will leave you guys until tomorrow's video. Stay curious, people. Bye.